And so we have Elaine Froese, who's a farm family coach. She's the moderator. And then the panel discussion will involve Ryan Immerkar and Anastasia Kubinec. So as an introduction, Elaine is a farm family coach with a certified farm family business transition coach label. She specializes in helping farm families work through tough issues to take action. Her superpower is helping families find harmony through understanding. She helps farmers get clarity about expectations, certainty for timelines and agreements, and a commitment to action. Faith Today magazine has dubbed her Canada's Farm Whisperer, and she was recently awarded the Farm Management Canada Wilson Laurie Award for Excellence in Farm Business Management. 4-H Canada awarded her their first Most Distinguished Alumna Award. She's an award-winning author of 5 books, she has an online course, Get Farm Transition Unstuck, which helps procrastinating farmers deal with the emotional factors affecting planning. She farms with her husband, son, and daughter-in-law in southwestern Manitoba by Boisvane on a certified seed farm. 2020 was their 43rd crop year. Her latest joy is being grandma, and her goal is to empower family, increase profit, and secure legacy as she provides practical communication tools for farm families across North America. She has a website, ElaineFroese.com, Twitter at Elaine Froese, on Facebook at Farm Family Coach, and a YouTube channel, Farm Family Coach. Okay, so I'm gonna, I think at this point, throw it over to the tech people to play the pre-recorded session. And then when we come back, I will introduce our other 2 participants and bring them into the conversation. So.
Hi, I'm Elaine Froese, Farm Family Coach. Welcome to Tools for Talking About Tough Issues. And I'm really happy to be sharing some insights in over 30 years as a farm family coach. So let's get right into it. Procrastination in terms of why people aren't taking your advice as agronomists, and you're putting things out there and time goes by and the fields aren't taken care of in a timely fashion. It's killing agriculture also in what I see happening with farm transition as well. But the mindset shift that I'd like you to consider today is how conflict resolution can be a risk management strategy. So let's just focus in on that. One of the things that has to stop is the pain of not knowing. And when we don't know things, we get high stress and high anxiety. So what needs to end is the pride and stubbornness of the farmers that you're dealing with, and especially those late adapters or the guys in the middle or the women in the middle of the curve who are not the early adapters and are not bracing the solutions that you're creating for them. So what happens over time then is it becomes a place of high stress and high anxiety. And this is the work of William Bridges. So what do you need to begin as an advisor to get the kind of information across and create solutions so that you can solve problems and not always be butting heads about whether or not they're going to follow your advice? So I have coined the phrase, discuss the undiscussable. And I use this Beanie Baby bowl as a talking stick when I'm doing family meetings. But it's just like there's this bowl, say perhaps in the middle of your flax field, where you're trying to figure out, what happened with the burn off and the cover crops. And I have a personal example there this year where we grew flax for the first time in a long time, but there were some issues around the timeliness of how the cover crop volunteer stuff came up and really didn't do a nice job in some of the field. So herbicide resistance, you're talking about clubroot. There's the undiscussable about the cost of not acting on your advice as an advisor. There's conflict with the young farm grads who come out of the School of Agriculture or the Faculty of Agriculture or from their other experiences as crop advisors, and all of a sudden they are chastised or discounted because of their age and possible lack of experience, even though they could have quite a bit of experience under their belt as an actual farm employee. There's also the whole thing about being afraid of change and not feeling comfortable about trying something new or following your recommendations. And also farmers, as you know, don't like to feel stupid. And so if they feel less than as you're speaking to them, then they're going to have some resistance and pushback to what you're trying to get them to do. And they also do everything in their power to avoid correcting their mistakes sometimes, and if, especially if there's a culture on the farm that you're working with where people don't feel that it's okay to make a mistake. So there's a huge fear of failure going on there as well. So this is the backside of my husband, Wes Froese, who some of you may know from Boys Bay and Select Seeds, and our son Ian is now in business with Wes. And I put this picture here because we're seed growers and have some history of roguing and being in the field in my earlier years of our marriage. But there's a lot of things going on, as you know, in a farmer's mind. And so one of the things I'd like you to consider is how you make your approach. Do you text first and say, can we talk about this today, or do you have time? Or if you have picked up the phone, can you just ask permission and say, is this a good time to talk? And so just extending courtesy to the life of a farmer and all the things going on in their minds and all the detailed decisions that they have to make day to day. I think it's just basic courtesy, and also is treating your role as an agronomist as a professional role with them as well. So think about all of the things that they're taking care of. As a coach, I want you to think about 3 things that you're going to provide as you create solutions and outcomes for your growers. One of them is clarity of expectations. Charlie, I just want to be clear. This is what I expect from you, is that when I reach out to you, I expect a timely response so that we can create solutions together, and so that it's not left out outside somewhere of getting executed, and then it becomes a problem or a bigger problem because we haven't dealt with something in a timely fashion. The other thing I want you to think about is certainty. Whatever you can do in the relationship to create certainty will be fabulous, because that decreases that pain of not knowing. And if you don't know, you can also admit your inability to create a solution in that moment. And you can say, I'd be more than happy to get back to you by noon tomorrow, because I'm going to have to do some more research on that, because quite frankly, I don't know the answer to what you're asking me. And then lastly, of course, I have a saying, talk does not cook rice. So when Wes comes bursting through the doors at 5:30 at night, he expects to smell something cooking in our very traditional marriage. But my commitment to act is to always provide meals or have something on the table around 5:30, because that's one of my roles. But if you talk about things and you talk and talk and talk, and you're not seeing any change from that producer, then you've got an action issue, and you need to reevaluate what the commitment is to actually following through and acting on your advisement. So let's just think about what a great day looks like to you as an agronomist. And one of them is grabbing the bull by the horns and trying to figure out what are the challenges for each one of your client families that you're working with. And do you have the capacity as an agronomist to want to get into the whole process of discussing the undiscussable and creating solutions? Are you able to attack the issue without attacking the problem and define, or the person, I mean? So again, attack the problem without attacking the person, and not making them feel stupid, not making them feel proud and stubborn, but making them feel like they are also part of the way that we need to create solutions for the outcome of what you're trying to do. And then also the fact that you're going to circle back and check in a timely fashion. And we have lots of great tools to do that now, with reminders on our phone and calendars, and good old pen and paper in your pocket. One of the weaknesses of farmers, and typically people who are independent entrepreneurs, is they're very reluctant to ask for help. And so you might want to actually ask your farmer, I'm just curious, Charlie, is it hard for you to ask for help? Because it always seems to me like I'm showing up here a day or two too late. And so just letting them know that that's part of building the trust with you, and that letting go of their pride would be a really good thing. So here's the deal. This is the work of Basic Conflict Resolution 101. So let's take a pen and paper out right now and draw this on in front of you. The cloud means it's in your brain, it's in your subconscious. I have no idea what kind of day you've had today with this conference, but my intent is to give you tools that you can actually act on very quickly. And you don't know what I'm thinking, feeling, needing, or wanting unless you hear what I'm saying, or unless you see how I'm behaving. And then I get a chance to feed back to you and say, well, I don't think that's going to work, or that sounds pretty expensive, or I'm reluctant to try that, and here's why. So if we back this up, intent is in your head, and you need to get inside the heads of your growers. And so you need to ask questions, but you also need to feed back to them what's working and what isn't. My intention is to give you tools today to talk about tough issues. Your intention, hopefully, is to take 1 or 3 nuggets that you find in this presentation and act on them so that you can help change the behavior of the growers you're working with. Now, this is Ian and Wes standing on top of the air tank, and I've put this here: love does not read minds. So in a family dynamic and in a marriage dynamic, we can't assume that we know what the other person is thinking, feeling, needing, or wanting. And that's why we need to stop and craft a lot better questions. And if you're interested in it, just fire me an email and I'll send you my phrase that pays, because I have a lot of one-liners that I use with farm families. So don't make assumptions. The other thing is to think about, why don't you want what I want? So here's where resistance. So you're talking, and we'll talk today about herbicide resistance in our coffee chat that we have with Ryan and Anastasia, and things that they come up again. But farmers will push back from you because of not intellectually understanding what the research shows or what other peer groups have found success with. So they might not get it in their head. So that's one place. So just touch your temples for a second. The next place they may not get it is in their heart, because emotionally they don't like how this feels. I don't like some young whippersnapper from the research group telling me what to do, or I don't like the fact that, I've been slow to adapt and now I'm really paying the consequences for herbicide resistance, or trying to get the kochia out of my flax. I mean, quite frankly, we don't grow flax very often because we have a kochia problem. And then thirdly is in your gut, is does the farmer actually trust you? And have you done whatever you can in your power to build that trust? So again, pushback comes either from the head, the heart, or the gut. And so I have this saying: that was then and this is now. And this is an aerial drone shot of our farm quite a few years ago now, because there's no grain dryer. There's a whole row of bins. And Ian and Kendra's house is just outside of that shelter belt. So again, using the phrase, Charlie, that was then, this is now. And what you're emphasizing is that things in production technology and grower agronomy are always changing in agriculture. So you can't stay stuck in the past. And then you use the words, I was just curious. Would you like to just hop in the truck with me here? We'll go down the road a bit and we'll see what happened at the Froese farm. We'll see what they're doing. So here are my 10 tools. First of all, you need to grab the bull by the horns and decide that you are going to take responsibility for the relationship. You are going to do your utmost not to be disappointed, deflated, or diffused by your client, and you're going to stand and take responsibility for leading from behind. You're going to reach out to them in the way that they like to be communicated to. So for some of them, it's texting. For some of them, it's a phone call. For them, it's actually showing up face to face. For me, it would be pick up the phone. It can solve a lot of issues and problems in the work that I do by picking up the phone. The other thing you're doing is asking that question, because in an iceberg, as you know, only 10% is above the water and there's a whole 90% below. I want you to have a learner mindset. This is my Toyota. After I unfortunately did not look left, I was back in my garage and I got hit by a fully loaded semi of barley by my neighbor. And he said, Elaine, you didn't hear my horn? I said, no. Thankfully, I didn't get hurt. But the assumption that I made is that nobody was coming down the lane. And what happened is I got schmucked. Thankfully, I didn't get hurt and my car was repairable. But we have to take responsibility to be learning from the situation. So what I learned from this is to pay attention of who's coming down my lane, because there's a lot of semis coming onto my yard, and I can't assume that I'm clear. And the other thing I need to do is I made a choice. I made a choice to take responsibility for my part of that. Another tool is to ask deeply and to express some feeling and say, you know what, Charlie, I want you to succeed, but I'm starting to get really frustrated because no matter which way I try and create solutions with you, I'm just always getting this pushback. So I really need to understand, Charlie, why is this so hard for you to take this next step that I'm suggesting? The other thing is to, again, copy success and look to the peer network or the other research groups that are adapting early and have a vision for doing what you want to do. And again, look at what their interests are. So interests are the common interests in conflict resolution, the things that kind of overlap below that iceberg. And so I want you to think about, what is it that everybody on this farm wants? And one of the things that they want, obviously, is they want profitability, and they want weed control, and they want their crops to look fantastic. So look at what the things are that are common to what you want as an agronomist and what they want. Now, Michael Pantalon wrote a book called Instant Influence, and his last name is Pant, Pantalon. And he uses the numbers on a scale of 1 to 10. On a scale of 1 to 10, Charlie, with 10 being really ready. Now that I've made this recommendation to you, I'm just curious, what number would you park yourself at? And if Charlie says, Kent, I'm at a 9, I'm ready to go, I trust you, I believe you, we got to do this, because otherwise we're just sinking backwards every year. Or Charlie might say, you know, Kent, I'm at a 2. And that means he's just really not ready to change. And then if he says 2, I want you to ask, okay, Charlie, why didn't you pick a lower number? Because possibly what he's trying to figure out is the fact that he's not ready to change, and maybe you haven't given him enough information yet. Let people have time to ponder your advice and your recommendations and say, I know this is a big decision. I've given you an idea of the dollar cost. I'll get back to you. And really do get back to them within 24 hours or whatever's a reasonable time frame. And also, don't prejudge the outcome, because if you play with possibility, you know, our flax field was a very healing balm for my friend who had bone cancer this summer, and all she wanted to do was come and stand in a field of flax. She didn't care about the cover crop poking through and that it wasn't a perfectly clean crop. So for her, it was all about getting that bouquet of flax at the end of the harvest season, because it means something to her. So she wasn't prejudging us based on what the crop looked like, but she's not a farmer. You are working with farmers all the time. And so again, play with possibility and don't prejudge the outcome. Also pay special attention to how you are going to build and cultivate trust. Are you respectful to your clients? Do you treat them fairly? And do you have a commitment to helping them be the accountability and leading behind them so that they are having that commitment to act? Also, come before your farmer groups with an open hand. It's hard to receive sometimes if you're the one who finds it hard to ask for help. So the farmer's response to you is ultimately their choice. And you can say that. And when I'm coaching a farm family that's highly conflicted, and I say, you're not getting what you want, there's a proposal on the table that's still workable. But if you decide to only do things the way that you think you need to do them, then I need you to understand that your response is your choice, and you're likely not going to get the outcome you're expecting. So be really clear about that. Also respect boundaries when you might be pushing too hard, and again, come to ask them. I have a little ampersand here just to remind you that weed control is like a polarity, because it's a problem that never goes away. There's always a new problem every year. So it's not either this or that, it's and. And so we need to plan how to deal with herbicide resistance, but then on the other side, we also need to act. And so a polarity is a problem that never goes away. And that's kind of what you do for your life as an agronomist. You're always dealing with problems that never are totally fixed, but they have to be managed. And then when you do make a mistake or something goes wrong, approach the person with, I'm sorry, what do I need to do to make it right? And there's a great book by Dr. Gary Chapman called When Sorry Is Not Enough. And if you'd like a paraphrase notes on that, just ask me for my article called Saying Sorry at Harvest, because there needs to be a model of forgiveness. And we've all had crop disasters or experiences. I remember one time we were trying to get rid of diamondback moss, and the crop spraying company sprayed the wrong field. And we knew this to be true because we heard them on the FM radios, but they would not own up to their mistake. So you need to have a policy in your own way of being and your own integrity to admit when you make mistakes. So there you go, 10 tools for talking about tough issues. Come from curiosity, take charge, ask better questions, play with possibility, really listen to the backstory that's not being said while you're talking to your client. Don't push them too hard, but give them time to process if they're process kind of people. Do whatever you can to cultivate trust. Respect their boundaries, reach out to them the way they like to be communicated to. And remember, ultimately, you are a crop advisor, you're an agronomist, but ultimately they get to choose how they want their farm to continue to be, and also what they're going to do with mistakes. So on my website at elainefroese.com or farmfamily.coach.com, you can find my key challenge audit in the Farm Family Toolbox. And I'd really appreciate you downloading that and then crafting it to make your own audit of what are the key top things, the top 10 things that really bug you about the pushback that you get when you're trying to create solutions and the farmer's saying, no, I don't think this is going to work. I think that would be a great audit tool for you to renovate for your own uses. And that's where you'll find it on my website at farmfamilycoach.com. I'm a coach. I want to empower your family. I want to empower people to have better profit by meeting and communicating more clearly. And I want them to secure the legacy so that there is actually a farm. For those of you who are looking for something to do rather than watching Netflix over the Christmas season, I encourage you to download my book at audible.com. And possibly for customer appreciation, you might want to share it with your clients as well and give them $15 to get their own copy. So you know how to find me, and we're going to go now to the chat with Ryan and Anastasia and just flesh out what this looks like for finding how you can talk about tough issues. Thanks for joining us today. Be well.
Okay, so the next portion is going to be with Anastasia Kubinec and Ryan Immerkar. So Anastasia, for those of you who don't know, is now an agronomist with Roquette. She did work with Manitoba Agriculture and Resource Development as the oilseed crop specialist, and then as the manager to, I'm going to say, an amazing crop industry development section, possibly because I was part of some of that, and the crop farm production extension section. So she has a Bachelor of Science Plant Systems and a Master of Science in Weed Ecology through the U of M. She's got an interest in agronomy because she has rogued many fields on a pedigreed seed farm in Holland, Manitoba, that her and her husband operate with her father. This is where she has more or most of her difficult conversations on changing tactics to do things like manage glyphosate-resistant kochia, reclaim saline soils, reduce soil erosion, and reduce potential for development of other pests. In addition, Ryan Immerkar is with us, and he's a managing partner with New Era Ag Technologies. Grew up in Swan River on a family farm, graduated from the U of M with a diploma in agriculture, then worked a number of jobs, was a sales agronomist, and then started an agri-coaching, RSI Agri-Coaching Limited, an agronomic service business affiliated with Agritrend. And then New Era Ag Technologies was created with his business partner, and it's an independent ag retail in the Swan River Valley with 10 full-time staff with seed, chemical, and fertilizer sales, and a seed treatment plant, as well as custom treating a variety of seeds. Now, I'm gonna mention that the reason that we brought Ryan in here is because of in the Swan River Valley, there was this crazy little discovery of clubroot, and so he was involved with that. So Ryan lives and farms in Swan River with his wife, Kristen, and his 3 children, Isabella, Emery, and Lexi. I'm going to run the slides for these guys as they talk about their experiences and give us an idea from an in the field agronomist perspective, how some of those tools may or may not have been part of how they dealt with certain challenges. So Anastasia, will you start us off, please?
Yes. Can you hear me, Tammy?
Absolutely. You sound great.
Great. I just got a headset, so it doesn't sound like I'm talking in a tin can. This working from home is a little bit different than what I'm used to.
You look like a pilot.
Thanks. Next slide, please. And I'm just going to skip this one because Tammy already did a great introduction of me.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay. So the difficult conversation that I'm going to talk about today is with herbicide resistance and controlling the gift that keeps on giving. So from the 2016 weed resistance survey, 68% of the fields had a resistant weed in Manitoba. Our big ones are wild oats, green foxtail, yellow foxtail, barnyard grass, cleavers, wild mustard, redwood pigweed, shepherd's purse, water hemp, and kochia. There's probably more out there. These ones is just a list. Folks in the audience probably know that we're looking at multiple resistance to different herbicide groups when it comes to these species as well. And these can be extremely challenging. They can build over time. Maybe a producer has seen them in the field, maybe paid attention to them, maybe it didn't really seem like a concern, but year after year of maybe not worrying about them too much, then they're going to get to that year that all of a sudden they're a major issue and something really needs to be done to them because they're really impacting the crop. Next slide, please. So these pictures are all mine from my fields. I'm sharing my sins with you again, as I like to do at the Manitoba Agronomist Conference. These red circles are actually corn, which it's a little bit hard to see, with some beautiful kochia in there. This is some of the issues that are happening. And when it comes to weed resistance, as Tammy mentioned, a lot of the difficult conversations happen on my farm or with my neighbors because they're calling me in and saying, hey, what's going on here? Like I never noticed this before, or never seen this bad. What can I do quick to get rid of this? At this point, when weeds are small and there's something that can be done, when there's different options that can be taken, assuming here glyphosate tolerant corn, throwing different options in there, or understanding that you have this issue before the crop is coming up, there are many more options to control things like herbicide resistant weeds. It's just discussing with the producer and being quite frank about, we're going to grow this crop here. We've seen issues here before. Do you really want to grow this crop? Next slide, please. Next slide, Tammy. I'm hoping my internet's still working.
I advanced.
Great. Okay, so here we have kochia and corn. Oh, good. Thank you. Kochia and peas. So this is a big example that I deal with now in my new job, but as well, having that difficult conversation before the crop is put in. Peas, great price. Guys want to plant a lot of peas. Maybe it's in some areas that they shouldn't be planting peas. Peas, flax is another great example, are really uncompetitive crops. Our herbicide options get to be quite low in those two crops when it comes to things like kochia. And kochia being such an aggressive weed in these very uncompetitive crops can spell disaster fairly quickly. If in a situation like this where the producer wants to jump on great prices for some of these uncompetitive crops, it needs to be a pretty pointed but respectful conversation about, in this area, maybe we don't plant that crop here. Maybe we put it down to something else. Or what other options can we do before we plant the crop? There's some excellent pre-job or other things that can, but it's just being frank with producers, I've found, and dealing with my father with some of these issues. You do get a lot of that emotional attachment in there too, where they've known you. It could be a farmer that you've worked with for a long time. They've known you for many years. You've been in their field for many years. They know you personally, and they don't necessarily want to hear what you're telling them. But you as the expert and as the agronomist and knowing what their field has for concerns and what some of their options are, really I have found if you can kind of point out the issues, some of the options that they can do, a lot of times if they can make the decision on their own based on the options that you've given to them, it does go a lot further and they feel like they've had some ownership in that decision as well. It's not just telling them what they should or should not be doing. Next slide, please. Great, here's another one. Okay, so again, this is just going back to here we have soybeans, green foxtail now, or yellow foxtail. In this crop, easy to control. But again, in some of the more uncompetitive crops, or if you're going into a situation where the producer is wanting to use a non-herbicide tolerant soybeans, we have another difficult situation. Again, you don't want to get to these stages. That's why I present my own pictures when I talk about things like this. It does happen to everybody. Things can creep up on you, but again, I have found over 20 years of talking to producers about this, going into it and asking questions, not assuming that they know everything, and definitely not assuming that you know everything when you walk in there, and trying to come to the solution together about what will work for them, timelines that are going to work for them, and the options. And sometimes it is having that difficult conversation of, we can't do anything for this crop. What can we do to potentially reduce the weed seed bank from having all these seeds in it again? Or what are some of the other options that we can do? It could be many things as to mowing it down, cutting it for hay, making sure that it's removed before it's setting seed. You don't necessarily want to go there because it is a lot of lost crop revenue for them, but it can be effective in helping to manage and control these issues for future years. That's the end of my slides.
It sure is. So Ryan, if you want to unmute yourself, I will, I'll advance the slides so that we're into yours. How about that?
Can you hear me and see me?
There you go. Absolutely. Looks great.
Oh, all right. I hope you can hear me. All right. Tammy already introduced me. I'm a managing partner at New Era Ag, and I still run RSI Agri Coaching. It's funny, I didn't think I'd be so nervous just sitting here in my office talking to my phone here. It's weird not talking to a crowd, but they asked me to talk partly on Club Root and then having tough conversations with customers. I've been scouting for 23 years now, I think, somewhere in there. It's been a while. And I've come in contact with lots of hard and sideways conversations in those past 23 years. But with the Club Root, there was a lot of initial pushback to not be open with the idea of letting everyone know that you have it. Some guys were, some guys weren't. That's changing now. The sky's not really falling. It's not, with technology and genetics and better practices. It's not the doomsday canola disease that it was in Alberta 10, 15 years ago. So I hate to use the word positives, but there's been some positives that come out of Club Root coming to Swan. Most farmers wouldn't agree with me, but there is. It's forced guys out of their comfort zone. They're trying different crops that they haven't really grown for a long time, or new crops that they haven't grown in a long time, and doing that and staying profitable at the same time. They're realizing technologies and advancements in equipment too that are helping them realize that this isn't such a bad thing to try new crops. I know guys swore 20 years ago they'd never grow peas again. Well, flex headers and new equipment and higher horsepower combines have changed that quite a bit. So it's not as tough as it once was. Same with flax. But now we're growing crops like we're growing a lot of peas, fava beans, hybrid rye. We're growing quite a bit of soybeans and even flax, and messing around with some black beans too. So this is pushing guys out of their comfort zone and making them try new things, and it's making them a better farmer. And they're actually forced to unlearn and relearn some growing practices from the past. So it hasn't been all bad. And in the end, land prices continue to go up here, and land rent continues to go up. So it can't be all that bad. So next slide, please. So I guess I have some advice. I guess I give to my employees and my crew over the years on how to deal with sideways or tough conversations with their customers or farmers. Number one is don't go into the discussion thinking you have all the answers, because you don't. If you think you do, you'll probably be humbled quite quickly. No one's expecting you to have all the answers just because you come out of university and you have your degree or college. And no, I don't know any farmer that is expecting that. So I tell my crew to go in with the conversation and with mentality that you're going in and to work together to come up with a solution to the problem. And remember, you'll have networks and resources that the farmer won't. So, you'll work together, and it always works out the best if you do it that way. And then another thing to add to that, never lie or make things up. That's just to save face. Never works out. You need to listen. The next piece of advice, you need to listen. It's hard to gather information on what's going on and what the problem is, and even gather the level of risk the farmer is willing to take, and gauge, his tolerance to trying new things if you don't listen to what he has to say. So you need to listen, and you want to try and play into the farmer's strengths, which should also alleviate some of the stress on a difficult situation. Take time to learn what he has to say and listen. So next point I have, I tell my guys, you should have more questions than answers. And that leads into, I'm just giving an example. A lot of times you meet a farmer at the field and he's pacing and he's already out there and he's wound up, and he'll kind of, not intentionally, but he'll get in your face, and rightly so, there's a lot of money riding on that field, and he'll ask you a question and he'll expect an answer right away, like, should I reseed this field, or should I spray this, and try. The best advice I can give you is there should probably be 3 or 4 more questions before you answer his question. Like, should I reseed? Well, have you done plant counts? When did you seed this? How long? Try not to get caught up in the moment with them. It kind of can back into a corner quite quickly. So, the other point I had was, I stole this off Craig Davison. Economics and logistics trump agronomy on most days. So you need to be aware of the financial impact your hard news could have on the farmer, and be cognizant of his capabilities on what he can do and what he can implement. You can come up with the best laid plans in January, but if it's too complex and too complicated or out of his capabilities, it most likely won't turn out for the best, and he'll just go back to doing what he was originally planning to do. So, and the last point I had was, you need to sincerely care about the situation. A farmer can know if you need to have some sense of investment into finding the solution for the problem. And I find that if over the years with my customers, as my relationships have grown and the trust has grown over the years, these hard conversations have gotten easier for them and for me. So things take time, and relationship, I've been here my whole career. So it takes a long time to build strong relationships with your customers. So I think that's all I had. So
That is great, Ryan. So we already have one question, but at this point in time, I'm going to make sure that Elaine is unmuted and that Anastasia is unmuted. All right. And Ryan, you just stay unmuted and then we'll be good to go. There we go. And the first question that's up is, I think, targeted to you, Ryan, but I think we'll broaden it a little bit and just say, how have your scouting practices changed in this case with Club Root? And what do farmers think about having you on the farm after you may have been in a field with Club Root? But I'd like to open it up to both you and Anastasia, because I know that she's been in some similar, like, biosecurity type situations. But when you have that challenge, how do you adapt?
Well, we carry our own spray bottles of bleach our tires. we try to stay, you'll have a conversation with your customer, and if he's not cleaning his equipment from farm to quarter or field to field, we won't either. Like if he's going to be dragging an implement across southwest of 3 and he moves to southwest of 5, well, it's not going to matter if I drive my truck or quad on there. So you just have to have those conversations with them. Be clear what's going on, and everyone in the valley, Swan Valley, is aware of clubroot and the issues at hand. And now at the start it was a lot more intense, the conversation, but now it's relaxed a lot more. But that's one of the main things. Mud and dirt is a big thing. Try and keep your vehicles clean and your quads clean as much best you can. It's not been hard the last few years. It's been so dry up here. So, but that's kind of the biggest thing that we had to encounter, and which in the end wasn't that big a deal, because you usually go to see a customer, you're on his farm for the day or half a day, and then you move on to the next one and clean from there. So, but yeah, that's.
So try not to overreact, but plan out. Anastasia, do you have anything to add before I drop it over to Elaine?
I guess with clubroot in the Holland area and the South Central area too, it has become an issue here as well. And now if haven't talked to the farmer and they haven't asked me to go in his field, if I see something funny, I will call before I say, hey, I see something interesting in your field, I'm going to go take a look. 10 years ago, I would have just walked in and called them or pulled some samples and brought them straight to their house. So definitely being more cognizant about that. And I do carry boots or some sort of something to clean my shoes before going from field to field.
Okay, that's the end of the audience questions. Elaine, up to you.
Okay, we have 7 minutes left according to my clock. And so we just wanted to pull out from all those many years of expertise from Anastasia and Ryan. So the first question I want to ask on behalf of the audience is, what could farmers do to make your life easier?
Who's first?
Ryan, we'll go to you first.
Well, I find you can almost never plan enough. I have some customers that we plan through the winter, plan A, B, and C almost. If different things arise, if different weather arises, I know it's never going to be perfect, but I find that we have time in the winter to plan, and if the more we do, and the more things we try and anticipate, I think things just run that much smoother. So that would be my biggest thing for guys. Yeah, you can't plan enough for the unexpected. So.
And Anastasia, you can answer that question too, what you would like farmers to do to make your life easier. But I want to drill down a bit more. What could your father do to make your life easier?
Farmers in general, if they could say, as soon as they see something, call their agronomist, because that just makes it way easier, because there's things that can be done in the early season that actually could potentially fix the problem or alleviate the problem. But once you get told at flowering or heading or harvest that there was an issue, you can't necessarily fix it. As for my father and my husband and my uncles, if they, again, tell me when they first see it, yeah, it's easy. You've talked very great points, Elaine, about calling or texting. A call or a text back from a producer to their agronomist is worth a lot. Just a quick note saying, hey, on the southwest of 23-711, I'm seeing something really weird. Would you mind coming over? Or when you have time, could you come check this out? Not sure what I'm seeing. Or even fellow agronomists, if they talk to an agronomist or the farmer saying, I just happen to go by your field, I see something, they can share that with their own agronomist, or it gives them a heads up, especially when it comes to things like grasshoppers, that all of a sudden you can check it many, many times, and then 3 days later, your field is full of grasshoppers. If somebody else notices that, share the information. It helps so many people so quickly.
And I have a young farmer here in Boissevain who is on Snapchat with 15 other farmers, even now, while they're, building their backyard ice rinks for their kids for Christmas holidays. And I just really think that the next generation, which I call Gen 2, is much more open to sharing a lot of information than maybe Generation 1. So Ryan, tell us a bit more about how logistics trump agronomy.
Well, I guess that goes back to what I said, a little bit back to what I said earlier, that if you have to understand, you have to know your customer, number one, what his capabilities are. And if you go to the wrong customer and you come up with a very elaborate plan on whether it's VR to variable rate fungicides, you can come up with all sorts of ideas. But when it comes time to get out there and seed, and he's not comfortable, he doesn't have the right level of comfort with technology, or maybe he does, that's up to you to understand which customer that could deal with that and which don't. And the best laid plans can just go back really quick to just doing what they always done. So you need to be aware of and know your customer and know what their strengths and weaknesses are, I guess. And
well, when we were preparing this, Ryan, you really impressed me about the fact that you'll be driving down a road somewhere and a farmer will call you on the fly. And if plan A hasn't been working, then you're going to go to plan B and then possibly also to plan C. So Anastasia, tell me what your most powerful question is as you approach someone with a difficult conversation, because you used the term, I think, in our conversations earlier about being nose blind and not being really aware of what's happening in the neighbors' fields that could have an impact on them.
Yeah, I guess really my questions are, okay, so if we're seeing this here, what does the rest of the field look like? Because things can be quite spotty depending on the field. And sometimes they do get very focused on a very specific issue that they're seeing right then and there, but the rest of the field might look great, or the rest of the field might look fantastic, but they might have a low spot, and all of a sudden that's the spot that really needs the attention to be focused on.
You should try being married to a certified seed grower. My garden looks way worse than my husband's fields.
I am a certified seed grower, and you've seen my pictures. So yeah.
We all have issues. We all have things to deal with. So I'd like to also encourage those of 300 people who are still here. I think we started the morning with about somewhere north of 360, and there's still 300 computers open. We're not sure that you're all listening to this conversation and trying to do multitasking of other things, but our day is winding down. So this would be your opportunity to use Ryan and Anastasia's expertise and ask them questions. So we'll just maybe give you a pause or two to throw some more questions into the Q&A if you have some. And while you're doing that, I would like to say a big thank you to Larissa Stevenson and to Tammy Jones. Tammy, you have a great sense of humor for working with this new virtual presentation. And Larissa, you're very patient. So thank you to everyone who's put this together. I'm a professional speaker, and I was on a conference this weekend with 300 other people and spending 3 days in front of a computer. So thank you to all of you in the audience that are still there. We really appreciate that. So
I do have a couple, hang on, Elaine, you've opened things up for questions. I do have one for all three of you actually, and that is, so you've had years of experience, all of you, and you've managed to establish credibility. How do you establish that credibility? If you have years of experience, what are some of the things that you did early on?
okay, Ryan, you go first.
it's pretty simple. Don't make things up and don't lie. Just be truthful and it'll work out. Work hard. It's pretty simple. That's my rules to success. I don't have anything too elaborate, but you can lose your credibility really fast by making things up as you go. So don't be afraid to say, yeah, I don't know. Don't be afraid to look things up. That's my best advice for anyone young or starting.
And don't be afraid to say, I'll get back to you, because you might have to use some time. I think the saying that I like, Tammy, from Brene Brown's work is being clear is kind. And so sometimes my Irish DNA takes over and I'm a little too direct with people, but I'm not coming from a spirit of judgment. I'm coming from a spirit of curiosity. And so Anastasia, how about you? What's your best thing for building credibility?
For me, I think being consistent with your approach, and usually before I give an answer, I'm double checking research or publications or talking to specialists or people just to kind of feel out the situation with them and what some of their thoughts are, just to kind of get a sober second opinion.
So a good phrase for that would be small, consistent action. And I think that builds success and credibility over time. And your producers and your growers will trust you because they can count on you to be consistent and to do the research and to be honest.
Sorry, we're over time, but we have 2 questions still here. Okay. Elaine, how can I approach a grower to open up to me about their financial situation, which is directly affecting their ability to adopt my recommendations?
Well, that would be a mindset shift altogether, because financial transparency is a huge foundation for the work I do too in farm transition. So if you understand that there is an economic discussion that has to happen, starting your conversation of, Charlie, it's not my intention to learn everything about your finances, but I'm really concerned that you're holding back here on an investment that's going to be a very clear game changer for you and your farm. So with your permission, and you ask for their permission, can we open up a conversation about what this is actually financially going to mean to you on a cost per acre basis or a production basis or whatever? And, you know, we just got our benchmarking report from our accountant this week, and it's life-changing for farmers to pay attention to those numbers. And I think that there needs to be a shift in how we feel about talking about money and about economics and about profitability. And again, you can use your own self-disclosure. So I might say, you know, in our farm, this is what we found out. And you know, Anastasia has a farm to go back to, Ryan has a farm to go back to. So when you can disclose and use your own personal self-disclosure to be feel free about talking about those things that might be tough to the grower, then you're giving them permission to also have that conversation.
Okay, so there was a comment to never put another agronomist down. That will also help you lose credibility really, really fast. So I think that's important. And then yes or no, can you or have you ever fired a client? My answer is yes.
Yes.
They fire themselves.
Perfect. Anastasia, anything to add? Just the smile. Okay, that is fantastic. Thank you so much. We're a little bit over time, but I appreciate everyone helping to make this discussion great.